And so we will be seeking your feedback about things. A very simple survey monkey that Zoran's going to set up. So you just have to go online and answer some little questions about what your opinions are about the program and stuff like that. So we'll try and keep it fairly simple. And it will obviously, because it's a survey monkey, it's online, it will be anonymous. So I don't have to say to you like we have to say, oh, can we? Philippa, do I look like I'm someone who has the technical nous to track something back to emails? Do I look like that kind of person? Ah. Yeah. You're joking. Yeah, I can lip read. That's the one good thing about being deaf. I can lip read. So that's fine. And, it's just the more useful feedback. You understand about feedback now is that feedback that sort of can lead to actions is more helpful. We've got this terrible thing at uni now where, because sort of this new generation of uni students is so used to the online environment and being anonymous, and they say the most horrible things on feedback, because we get, as teaching academics, we get evaluated by students every subject, at the end of every subject. And they can be vitriolic. And actually the uni it is cruel because they go for the person personally, and the uni has taken a bit of a stand, and they will trace them back. If they say something that's absolutely defamatory, the uni does have the capacity to trace them back. Yeah, well, they're trying to do that now. But, it's like a social norm. Like if you wouldn't say it to someone, oh, it's terrible. It's just, terribly personal comments. I mean, the worst I've ever had is, Susan, you think your jokes are funny. Well, I'm telling you, they're not, in capital letters. And I went, that's the worst. It wasn't increased form, it was capital letters. Yeah. It's interesting. It's interesting what people think is useful in feedback or not. But that's just revenge. That's just revenge. Maybe. You can't tell, though. You can't tell. If it wasn't funny. It was not funny. And which one are we going to read, Jen? Anyway, that will come up, but we'll wait till the Sydney folk have done their segment, which is when are they? Oh, okay. So it's going to stuff up a little bit the homework thing. So I think Jenny and and Zoran haven't talked about it, but I think you will have essentially therefore 3 weeks off for homework. But we'll try and find out about the body and mature behaviour readings thing, so that you can just have that bubbling stuff. Yeah, with that they essentially have had these 3 weeks off for no homework. So, but I don't want to, I don't want to go away from this conversation with the impression that you don't like the homework. Yeah, yeah. So today, actually, we'll yeah, question, yep. Great. Alison, thank you. Yep. Yep. Yeah. Oh, say it again. Oh.
It was just about homework.
Yeah.
Which, or, you know, things we do, which I think's fantastic. It's just the issue of, and increasingly this will be something that no doubt you've given quite a bit of thought to, which is, you know, Linda, Julie and I can physically get together.
Yeah.
Poke and prod each other, that kind of thing, observe each other. But, you know, then when we get together it just gets harder. It's hard for some people individually, and then it's hard when the exercise for a small group, or what we might constitute as our small groups. Anyway, I don't know what the way around that is, but it's because I know we're moving more into that kind of
into the touching stuff. Yeah.
We ended up. We discussed it. We did it with someone.
Yeah.
And it was, well, we had a few funny emails about, you know, putting our hands through the screen and stuff.
Yeah. Yes, Zoran kind of snuck that
really
lifting the head thing up in without me even noticing that it was there, and having a conversation about whether that was, I think, was it, but it was that you could lift up anybody's head, wasn't it?
No, it was that
each other's
homework, the small group homework was that you actually did it
on each other.
On each other.
Yeah. So we will, yes. Yeah, no, it's really important, because actually it's impossible, you know, to have a practitioner around. So it's a constraint. Now we will find a way around, and maybe it will be that for those of you who don't have a student colleague around to practice on, that we make sure that it's safe enough that you do with, you know, a real person, an unsuspectingly real person, or a horse or something like that. No, not necessarily a horse. Yeah. I thought it was self-subscribed.
That's the problem.
Okay. Yeah. What was that? Oh, yeah.
They've done the first 2 bits, and I'm going to just talk in general about the whole idea of what a lesson's about while we're here. And in fact, that is what we've been doing.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was just an extra bit of...
Okay.
It's only a couple of pages, the lesson coming forward.
Oh, the AY. Yeah, so tomorrow I'll be going over that more. We'll do sort of a little mini workshop on body image tomorrow. Well, it's some material that I put together. I've done it as an advanced training and workshops for lay people and all sorts of things, and we'll just go through that a little bit. It's a bit neuro-y, so it kind of fits in, and it puts into an experience stuff that's in that article that you printed out, the Blakesley one, and then there's a couple of lectures that Feldenkrais gives in the AY lessons. So the 24 is one, and there's a couple more where he goes more into. So the 24 one that Zoran sent is more about body image, and then in the later ones, I'll give you the references for them. He goes more into self-image, so it's even more about the whole self, rather than just the body. So your whole self about that. But anyway, so we'll have a day of body image tomorrow. Okay, now, and before lunch today, we will give out a copy of the Standards of Practice and the Code of Conduct. And you can read them over the lunch, and then we'll talk about it this afternoon. They are a little bit dated. They were devised like during my program, which is, the late 80s, early 90s. And, we'll talk about this very specific sort of political climates that were around then, particularly in the States, about why some of the distinctions are made. So in a sense, they are quite historic documents, and they will be updated in light of, events more recently, let's say, to be more contemporary, and some of those political issues aren't around anymore. But of course, now there's a new awareness around the what's the Me movement? Me Too movement. So that will be, that's obviously a part of what we'll talk about. We'll talk a little bit about this. What do we mean by professional behaviour? It doesn't mean that you have to wear a business suit. It doesn't mean that you have to have a slightly different set of clothes though when you're teaching, and being aware of, projections. In October, because Jeff has a background in psychology and basketball, two go together, but maybe they do. He will be looking more at that sort of thing. So that's, I think I mentioned before, some of the competencies are around bringing in allied disciplines, and you probably noticed we've been doing that. So obviously the discipline, this segment is more around neurology and neuroscience. Jeff's sort of overall mission is more from that bent, and he can talk about this sort of the issues of projection, of teachers projecting onto students and students projecting onto teachers, and it's all in the same kind of vein of it's all we're just sort of projecting these fantasies and illusions, and I don't mean like woo-woo sexual fantasies, but fantasies of power or expertise or any of those sorts of things, and he's got a really neat way of talking about that sort of stuff. We've discussed it over Skype, and that will be really interesting. It's really interesting for us as training staff, and it'll be really interesting for you as emerging teachers to think about these. It's because it is a different relationship. Of course, the discipline you had with Julie was more around learning, so sort of education theory and as well as developmental theory. You've had the sort of biomechanics, anatomy kind of discipline stuff at the beginning, and Zoran's had more philosophical disciplines, so that will keep going. But that's just for you to be aware that the next segment, that's kind of Jeff's shtick, and that's really good, and he'll be really going into great detail about self-use, because actually in a way it's that your physical self-use is a bit of a manifestation of that relationship. So that embodied relationship in terms of your self-use that will influence the person's experience of themselves as well as you. And the thing that Jenny's been sort of, sneaking in there about this idea of becoming a system, he will go into that a lot more. So that will be great. So I've given you a little taste, and we'll continue to do that today and tomorrow about this. How do I... what do I pay attention to in myself, some little landmarks in myself around self-use when I'm working with somebody else, and that will be a real feature of next segment. Fantastic. Is it 2 weeks or 3 weeks? 2. What dates are they? To the 12th. Oh. I was thinking last night maybe I should pop over for a little bit, but I'll be coming back from India. I'll be full of giardia or something. I'm very pessimistic about it. Take my probiotics, take my antibiotics, take my biotics, take my Uberbiotics. I'll see what I can swing. See what eyebrows raise at work if I say, I'm just going to go away again for a couple of days. All right. I think that's all the sorts of announcements. Anything else that's absolutely burning that you would like us to consider covering in the next 2 days? Keep going as we are. We're going to be finishing standing on the top of the hip joint. You will know the top of your hip joints beautifully like that, or if not, at least be a work in progress. We might do a couple more elderly citizens. Now that funny elderly citizen one that we did not yesterday but the day before, and I asked you to go home and write some notes about, I didn't forget about that. I think that is such an interestingly taught lesson that I'm going to turn it into a bit of homework for you, because in conversation with some of the people that I was observing, and I think this would be my projection too. Probably one of my fears was teaching a lesson where there was, and Anna and I had this conversation. You're teaching a lesson where there is a real obvious outcome, like rolling up to sitting and rolling down again. That can be quite, because there is something to get or not get. Now, actually, in that one, he does it in an interesting way. He gets to do the whole, the movement doesn't evolve from a little bit to the movement. He actually gets them to do the movement as badly or as well as they can, and then he refines it. So that's quite a good overall strategy in an ATM. However, it might be fun. I choose to use the word fun. You can substitute some other word for you to teach that lesson. And you can start off with his bare bones words, and I'll type them out for you and send them to you. And then see how, when you're watching one or two people doing it who are new to it, who don't know what the movement is, how you would add to his words, which is kind of what I asked you to do as the evening thing. So if you've got the notes for that lesson, don't throw them away. Keep it in your memory bank, because that's what I would like you to do for homework. But I'll obviously write it down in a nice little staged manner. I think that would be fun. What word would you like to substitute for fun? Interesting. Anna? Oh, yeah.
What people, you know, like we'd always get into some groups of brainstorm if you were going to work with, like, you know, someone who could come up with like a whole maybe 10 different groups, where each person has a group they might be interested in, and then we brainstorm what ATMs might be good and why. Just because that's neurodiversity.
This is something that Jenny does really well with groups. So there's picking ATMs for groups and working in groups together to identify a group, and then planning some ATMs around it. So you've got some of your practice exercises to do that as homework, or to do it do it as homework. You could do it homework, yeah, because they could online chat. With your little case studies. Yeah. Okay, so yes. Next segment, there'll be some little, Jenny's got these great little sort of case study things that you can work with, and then you work in a group around constructing a series for this little cohort of people, as well as how you might attract them. You know, like if it's a group of fishermen, you dangle a little sardine. No, not really. You're frowning at me, are you? Oh, you need it now. You can have a conversation with us. Email some ideas to us. The thing is, if they're a new group, you've had a lot of, you know, the basic lessons. You can't go wrong. You know, as an absolute fallback thing. So thinking about when we were meeting, to put together our kind of promotion campaign to start this training, we were sitting going, why don't we base it on the ATM book? Feldenkrais himself thought that the ATM book was kind of the entree. That was his desire, that was people's entree into Feldenkrais. It was the most obvious thing, a book. So those lessons he chose as kind of absolutely capturing an essence. So to my mind, if it's an introductory workshop for people, you can't go wrong with those lessons, but you need to cut them down. And you've worked with that. I mean, I taught them, a lot of them here in the class, and so you understand them and you understand how to simplify them, what you can embellish and what you can't. But if you're ever really stuck, have them in your backpack. You know, they're just winners. And maybe we should, because the essence of them can turn into really nice little 3-minute miracles as well. So we might have that as a bit of homework, if not in between this segment, because I don't want to chuck you up, but certainly after October, to add to your kit bag of competencies, not only having a few full ATMs under your belt that you could teach, you know, on notice, but the little 3-minute miracles that you could do in the restaurant or on the tram or something. So you've got a couple little 3-minute miracles now, but to add more and share them, we might do that after October.
One of the things I've noticed when we have done the activities of picking a set of lessons for a particular interest group, and I think you guys might even have done it way back briefly. Yeah.
Oh, right. Okay.
Okay. Often when we come back with the lists of what lessons would you teach, strangely, they're the same lessons. And so, you know, every group's going to benefit from pelvic clock and dead bird and a breathing one and a rolling one and flexors and extensors. And so probably the interesting question to ask yourself is, how would I adapt it? How would I run a theme through this lesson?
Yeah.
What nuggets are going to connect the lesson to the specific need of this cohort?
Perfect. And that could even be the reference move. You know, if it's a workshop for golfers, that they practice their swing before and after the breathing lesson. They practice their swing before and after the pelvic clock lesson. And then you can guide them about some of the characteristics. And then think about if it's for a particular, if the workshop is for a particular function, like, you know, I was talking about the violinist stuff, and we can do more of this next time I'm back, because I'm quite happy to do task analysis till my ears bleed. Is to consider the task and what are the kind of key global patterns in it, and then what are some of the key. You remember I said with that target thing, you can move from the outside in. You can know what the task is and then work your way in. What's the kind of global pattern? So for golf, I don't play golf, but I have eyes and I can watch a golfer and I can see that rotation is really important and weight shift. So it's a rotation that happens on a changing axis. You know, so it's not just swinging around one leg like we're doing on standing on the hip, but you're shifting your weight and rotating at the same time. So it's a shifting axis. So there's two, but you can break that down to rotating around a relatively vertical axis. These lessons, I would imagine, would be fantastic for golf, because people really get a sense of rotating over their feet. And of course they do, I think you do come up on one toe at the end of a golf swing. Or if you're working with, you know, I probably wouldn't go. Sports people and musicians are quite rabid about their craft. So you probably need to have a fair bit of credibility in their craft to into their world as a first up class. Don't let it stop you in the long term, but as a first up, don't go there. That's my advice. Unless you have an entree into their world. It would be, anyway. However, if it's for senior sits, well, we've got the elderly citizen stuff. But as Jenny said, I mean, those elements in a simplified way from the ATM book are going to work. If it's pregnant mums, you've got pregnant pauses. You know, why not use Alan's brain? He's tried and tested in the marketplace all the sort of the key concepts that he thinks really help women when they're pregnant. The proof's in the pudding. It's a fantastic series. So that's a really nice kind of model. But you can see that the same elements of Feldenkrais are in pregnant pauses or anything else.
When I started to teach pregnant pauses, I taught it to my seniors group first as a practice.
See? Fantastic. Yeah. You know, we're humans. We're all humans. And our biomechanics is quite similar, whether we've got a big bump from a baby or a big bump from a good life. And, you know, whatever. So the sort of senior citizen stuff is probably the area that's the most right for the picking for you to go and practice with now. If you're thinking of disability groups, again, keep it really simple and keep it at these fundamental lessons, you know, nothing fancy.
For seniors, they can cope with the ATM book, they can cope with the green Harvard book.
Yep.
They can cope with the Gabby and Mia lessons. They can cope with pregnant pause lessons.
Yep.
So
yep.
There's plenty of stuff.
Yeah.
There.
So putting together a string of ATMs for a group, in a way you could see is quite an advanced skill, you know. Sorry? The balance series is really good. Yeah, the chair stuff from WA.
Yep.
There's a manual there. So this was a project that started after I graduated. So it was in the 90s, I think. A couple of WA practitioners got a bit of grant money and did a project. The buggers never wrote it up, though.
It's briefly written up in the front of the book.
Yeah, but they didn't publish it in the real world.
Right.
In my academic real world, so it doesn't actually exist. But yes, the study was really good. And the group that did the balance series is mostly chair lessons, so they're fantastic lessons. And they're tried and tested, so you can tell people, we know this stuff works because it was in a trial. I think we did a trial with U3A people and used that and showed that it was on some measures superior to the sort of Otago balance series. So, they're good. Balance.
It's called Balance Master.
It's Richard Yen, who's a GP.
Richard Yen and Annie Cosgrove.
Annie Cosgrove, who's a physio. Yeah.
It's falling apart.
This one's falling apart, but maybe you can probably
I'll get it read
sell e-copies as well.
That's a long and frustrating story.
Oh, okay.
We're working.
Don't go there.
That.
So there are, 32 lessons. I think that
they're
standing,
either sitting on chairs or standing next to chairs or behind chairs until people are confident to be completely freestanding.
Yeah. Friendly chair and friendly floor, finding your feet, dancing with the wall. These are the ends of them, side to side, transferring weight left and right while sitting, turning and sitting, sit to stand, waking up your balance senses, ankles, standing or walking, hands to feet, the pantyhose lesson. So a lot of these things that they can turn into 3-minute miracles. So there's classics, lesson on 4 points, finding your feet, pelvic clock 1, 2, mostly flexion, more clocks, infinite clocks, picking up your feet through side bending, more side bending, heads may roll, folding ankles, beginning stairs, blah, blah, blah. Balancing with your pelvis, sideways sliding, etc. It's 32. And the blurb is there. All participants were independent, community living individuals over the age of 65. The average age was 72 and the oldest was 85 years. Many had fallen previously, some sustaining fractures, none used walking aids, some struggled to stand with their feet together, a few of them were high functioning from a balance point of view. One came to class on a bicycle. So it was quite a wide range. They were volunteers. It was a 16-week program, 2 classes a week. And some were randomised either to Feldenkrais classes or a no treatment control group or Tai Chi. And prior to the commencement, some expressed concern at getting to the floor, simply said they would not be able to, blah, blah, blah. So it goes on about it. So it's all there. And you can use that story, if you like, as part of your blurb. But you'll recognise almost all of the lessons, because these were quite novice practitioners. I mean, Richard Yin, as I said, he's a GP. He's never really worked as a Feldenkrais practitioner, but he's a great advocate of Feldenkrais. And Annie Cosgrove is Bridget Cosgrove's mum, if that means anything to you. And she's Annie, I think Annie was was she in Sydney? She wasn't in mine. Was she in Brisbane? First Brisbane.
I don't know. I think it might have been Sydney, but I don't know.
Yeah, so she's sort of around my vintage in terms of training, roughly, but a little bit older than. Anyway, so whatever that means to you. But this was done relatively soon after their training program, 1999. So a couple of years. I think Richard was from Brisbane training. Anyway, so start with somebody else's wisdom when you're putting together a series of lessons would be my. However, we will practice it in here and talk through more detail and get you to and give you feedback. But we're always happy for you to just send us an email running by ideas. You're not on your own in this next exploration. And we'll set up a more formal kind of, maybe this is part of your homework stuff about putting this together and teaching together or something. I think I've mentioned that before. Okay, that means I think that we better do an ATM.
Oh yeah, one last announcement.
I want last announcement. Oh yes, please.
For those of you who are local, in September, the 8th of September, we are having a Feldenkrais Discovery Day over in Abbotsford. We did it last year. It was fantastic. Had several hundred people came through, and to be part of that community, to see our colleagues giving talks, giving their fires, there was constant flow of ATM classes, and it was tons of fun. So if you would like to take a poster and put it somewhere in your community, Lexine has kindly taken advantage of her husband's kindness to get this printed off. And certainly if you want to come along, it's going to be a great day.
And you'll be receiving an email with the details and flyers